Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of News for Normies. If you're new to the channel, I try to bring you some of the week's most important news in a relatively short time frame. If you like this video, enjoy it, or have some normies in your life, hit the like button, share it with them, because there's quite a bit of stuff in this week's episode that I think a lot of people probably need to know about. So, that's why I do it. I do it for the normies. And if you're a continuing viewer of the channel, whatever, thank you. The support is greatly appreciated. And before I get into any actual news, I want to say sorry for last week. I didn't upload anything because I didn't record anything. Got caught up with some house projects unintentionally because the weather turned out to be better than the forecast had said. So, sorry about that. Alright, now moving on to actual news. So, if you are concerned about climate change, you're going to be a fan of the UK. If you have common sense, then you're going to think, what in the world are these people doing? The UK, the United Kingdom, not the University of Kentucky, the UK is proposing a plan to block out sunlight over their nations in order to fight climate change. Despite the fact that they've spent an exorbitant amount of money investing in solar power energy over the last couple of years. So, this definitely seems like they are shooting themselves in the foot, and it definitely doesn't help fight the, I guess you would say, conspiracy theory that these kind of people are just anti-human at this point. Because if you've invested a ton into solar energy and you're like, let's block out the thing that gives us the energy, then, people are probably going to suffer and possibly die from that. Also, I'm not entirely sure how this will have an impact on climate change, since countries like China and India are still the largest polluters on the planet, and China continues to open more and more coal-powered energy plants, while, Western countries do dumb shit like this. So, I don't know what they're thinking. They probably aren't, and that's part of the problem. Yeah. Blows my mind. And these are the experts we're supposed to listen to, by the way. Fuck you, Douglas Murray. Okay. Moving back over to our side of the pond. A couple weeks ago, I talked about a senator going down to El Salvador to try to get that one dude back who was deported from Maryland, the whole Maryland man story you've probably heard about. Well, turns out 4 more Democrats are joining Senator Van Hollen and have traveled to El Salvador in order to advocate for Kilmar Garcia, the Maryland man who was deported. And I know I'm beating a dead horse into glue and ash at this point, taking that one from Tim Pool a little bit. Despite what the Democrats claim, he was ordered to be deported twice after he entered the United States illegally, and he had a restraining order placed on him from his wife for domestic violence, and he was arrested with several other MS-13 gang members at one point as well. So, there is concrete evidence this guy is a shitbag and does not belong in the United States. Case closed. You cannot argue anything else at this point unless you are just lying through your teeth. But speaking of illegal immigration, and this is a wild one, and this is not even the wildest one here. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, a judge in New Mexico has resigned after agents from Homeland Security raided his home. Judge Jose Cano was allegedly harboring several illegal aliens, including one man who belonged to Tren de Aragua, and was arrested for all of this, as well as tampering with evidence about the man's case. Both Judge Cano and his wife were arrested over this whole ordeal. And again, you're reading stuff like this, it's really building a case more and more that Democrats just hate the United States. At least the politicians do. And if you're just an average person that tends to lean Democrat watching this, I would highly consider you reconsider your politics at this point. Because if you keep voting for shit like this, then you're causing people like myself to look at you in a light of, I don't want to say treason because that's very harsh, but just anti-American. I guess we'll put it at that. I have linked an article about this down below if you want to go read it, just so you know I'm not full of shit like CNN. Actually, speaking of that, it might have been... Oh, I actually used a CNN link on that one. So there you go. You can see that I'm just not pulling, information off the Daily Stormer or something like that. So that's one judge who was arrested for preventing, federal law enforcement from enforcing federal laws. But a second judge in Wisconsin was also arrested for trying to prevent law enforcement from nabbing an illegal alien from the courtroom. This stuff blows my mind. Judge Hannah Hogan allegedly tried to prevent law enforcement from detaining an illegal alien in her courtroom and tried to allow this man to exit out of like a back door of the courthouse. That way he, would avoid law enforcement out the front door or whatever. So, it's funny. Democrats have been on record in the past saying about Donald Trump and like the J6 protesters, no one's above the law. But then they do this. In your own words, no one's above the law. So if you are obstructing federal law in this case, you're going to get nabbed. Now, I don't agree with all federal laws, as I've stated in the past, because I'm like many people that think that, marijuana should not be a federal crime anymore. But something like illegal aliens in this country who have ties to illegal gang cartels and stuff, like, they need to go. They need to go. Just absolutely crazy. Now, I got a link about this one down below as well. This one here has me concerned, and definitely needs to be challenged somehow, legally, or I don't know, but a new memo from the Trump administration claims that ICE agents can just enter people's homes without a warrant to arrest illegal aliens. This is incredibly stupid and flies in the face of the Fourth Amendment. And this is going to cause both law enforcement and, innocent people to end up being hurt and or killed. I completely disagree with this, and I would encourage any law enforcement agents to reconsider this one. I'm remembering a case several years ago now down in Kentucky, not related to illegal immigration, but there was a lady who was like a nurse practitioner or something who was being investigated for like drug trafficking and stuff, and they went to serve a no-knock warrant at her apartment. Now, if I remember the whole situation correctly, police allegedly did knock and announce they were police, but they were originally ordered to just do a no-knock warrant. So in the middle of the night, they were just going to kick in her door and arrest her. Now, if you are someone like me and, at 1 o'clock in the morning, you hear, a foot trying to come through your door, you're probably going to jump out of bed, adrenaline spiked, grab the gun, and as soon as that door flies open, you're going to start shooting. So in this case, with ICE just going to do the same thing, it's going to cause people to get hurt or killed. So, again, this one definitely needs to be challenged. People need to criticize Trump and ICE and Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, whoever is involved with this, and raise some hell about this. Non-violently, but, Trump is an ego guy, so if his ego is hurt in this one, they may tone it down. So I've left a link about this story and a link directly to, the website for Congress that has the Fourth Amendment in its entirety. So you can go read both of those, and you should come to the conclusion like, oh shit, this is not good. Moving on. Going back across the pond now. I'm sure at this point everybody has heard that Pope Francis passed away on Easter Monday, the day, the Monday right after Easter. Now, I am not Catholic, so I'm kind of just going by rote a little bit here, but according to the Catholic faith, the Catholic Church, will be in mourning for over a week from said day of passing, so into next week sometime. And a new pope will be chosen after that. So, don't know how this is going to shake out. I'm not Catholic. I'm not really concerned about it, but if you are Catholic, I imagine you are. So, there you go. Somewhat unrelated, but not completely unrelated. Vice President J.D. Vance met with the Pope like one day before he passed, and immediately afterwards, people were claiming, "Oh, J.D. Vance killed the Pope." People on the right were saying it jokingly, kind of tongue-in-cheek. People on the left were like all up in arms about it or whatever. The dude was old and had health problems. He was like just released from the hospital very shortly before he passed. So like it was a combination of age and health problems that took him out. Like that's pretty common sense to see. My heart goes out to people who were friends, family, loved ones around him. Losing somebody like that is never easy. So, thoughts and prayers, I suppose. But interestingly, according to the National Catholic Register, more young adults are converting to Catholicism, with more dioceses reporting an increase in conversions ranging from 30% to up to 70% in some areas. Now, while I think it is good for people to have this kind of religious discipline and a community around them, I would also urge anybody who is a new convert, and if you've been a lifelong Catholic as well, to ask questions about the Catholic Church at large and read up on Martin Luther as well as the Protestant Reformation. In my opinion, Martin Luther was 100% correct. And if you actually read your Bible, you'll also realize that as well. Also, keep in mind that since the time that America has been a country, just in the last 250 years, there have been over 800 cases that we know of priests sexually abusing young boys within their respective churches. And many of them get off scot-free with little to no legal charges whatsoever. Instead, they just kind of get moved around and continue to do despicable things under the guise of being a holy man. So, just ask some questions there. And I've made it clear before, I am not perfect by any means, but the church as a whole has a lot of problems that need to be addressed. And I'll just leave it at that. Okay. Let me get a drink of water here. Alrighty. So, everybody's favorite undercover reporter, James O'Keefe, recently released a video of Nicholas Terza, who is a branch chief with the Department of Defense, saying they will do everything they can to undermine the Trump administration. I think since then, this guy has resigned or was removed from his position, and hopefully some charges are filed against this guy for intentionally wanting to subvert the will of the United States government and the people. And again, I guess I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I don't agree with everything the federal government does, but I did vote for Trump. I like a lot of what he's doing. You can see I just criticized something from his administration, so I'm not one of these people that worships Donald Trump as if he is Jesus incarnate or reincarnate. So, yeah. But if you're on camera deliberately saying I'm going to disobey orders, that's pretty severe. Yeah. And kind of moving on to something similar to this, Tulsi Gabbard has referred 2 individuals to the Department of Justice for criminal charges over leaking government information, and possibly a third person in the near future. Now, this is a tricky one for me because people like Edward Snowden are technically, considered leakers because, he did leak a lot of information about how the federal government was and is spying on American citizens. However, if information is being leaked, about, say, military actions that could subvert things that the U.S. government is trying to do, or, if it's like some sort of national security issue or something like that, then yeah, those people should probably be prosecuted. Now, you're probably thinking, is this in correlation to the whole Signalgate thing? Probably. And I know a lot of people are thinking right now, oh, Pete Hex is getting fired, they're going to remove him. I highly doubt that. Trump has come out and said he's keeping Pete Hegseth on. So, if anything, out of that whole story, Mike Waltz should be maybe looked at because he was in that chat and probably shouldn't have been. And he was the one, at least from my understanding, who leaked some of that information in regards to the military strikes on the Houthi rebels a couple weeks ago, or maybe about a month ago now. It all bleeds together. So, we'll see how this shakes out, and keep going forward. And if any information comes up next week, I'll be on here talking about it. So, Harvard University is in some controversy right now, as the prestigious school has apparently taken money and educated people from a Chinese organization called the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps, or XPCC for short. The XPCC is a paramilitary organization similar to Blackwater here in the U.S., or the Wagner Group in Russia, and the XPCC has been linked to human rights abuses such as forced labor, internment, and religious persecution in the Xinjiang region of China. I probably butchered all of those Chinese words. Don't give a shit. I'm American. End of story. So this is one I think people need to look into a little bit more, because it's been a talking point on the right for a long time that the university system has been basically infiltrated by communist influence and stuff. And when stories like this come up, it kind of gives more evidence to that fact. Just saying. In my opinion, I think the only college universities who have really avoided this are largely Christian universities, what's it down in Tennessee? Lee University, I think, and Liberty University down in Virginia. But even then, I'm not entirely sure because I've never been to those institutions in person. I'll leave it at that. So, speaking of college universities, and again, this is a little bit old news. Jeez, I cannot talk today. Having a Biden moment real bad. A school shooting happened at Florida State University just before Easter. So again, it's kind of old news, especially with how the news cycles run now. And the shooter was allegedly the son of a sheriff's deputy and used a handgun that he obtained from the home. If my memory serves me correctly, he was 20 years old, so he wasn't even legally old enough to buy a handgun. So he broke a law by stealing a handgun and then using it in a violent act. So again, gun control laws. Look how well they work there. But it's funny to me how this story went quiet real quick once it was known that the shooter didn't use a scary black rifle. When asked about gun control, President Trump vowed to protect the Second Amendment, which is surprising to me since he was shot in the head at a rally last year, and during his first term, he signed the executive order banning bump stocks. If you remember that was after that whole Las Vegas shooting that happened, where the shooter allegedly used bump stocks on an AR-15 to conduct the shooting. I think you understand where I'm going at with there. So I'm glad that President Trump has maybe had a bit of a turnaround in this regard, but we'll see what happens. Speaking of gun rights, the Supreme Court on Monday, April 21st, 2025, rejected an appeal from Minnesota to revive the state's ban on gun carry permits for adults aged 18 to 20. If you're unaware of how gun laws work, most states have laws stating that adults between 18 and 20 cannot carry a handgun because you have to be 21 to buy one. So it kind of falls in line with that. Interestingly, most of these states don't have laws that say that somebody aged 18 to 20 cannot possess one, but you can't buy one yourself. So you see where I'm getting at there. Back to the Supreme Court, though. The Supreme Court's decision, leaves in place a lower court ruling that the ban in question violates the Second Amendment. So this is great news for gun rights in the state of Minnesota and potentially the country going forward, because this may set some precedent to challenge other laws that prohibit gun rights in the future. Also, to throw some shade at my own governor, Mike DeWine, while he was a senator several years ago, a bill went through that would allow nationwide concealed carry reciprocity, meaning your CCW permit from your home state would be valid in all 50 states, similar to your driver's license. And Mike DeWine was one of 2 votes that killed this bill. So keep that in mind should he ever run for any kind of public office again in the future. Thankfully, his term as governor here in Ohio is coming to an end soon. And if you're not aware, especially if you live here in Ohio, Vivek Ramaswamy is running for governor, and it looks like he's getting a lot of traction in that regard. So we'll see how that shakes out. And finally, on more gun rights stuff, this is kind of a bad one, so sorry to end it on a bad note, but Colorado Governor Jared Polis signed a bill that would ban, quote, the manufacturing, selling, and purchasing certain semi-automatic weapons in Colorado that use detachable magazines, end quote. This bill will go into effect August of 2026, so there's still some time to possibly challenge it, and hopefully it can be challenged and struck down. This bill will mainly affect rifles such as the commonly owned AR-15 and AK-47, but could also possibly affect commonly owned handguns such as Glocks, Sig Sauers, and other similar handguns that use a magazine, because most of them do nowadays, unless you have a revolver. So it is unclear at this time if people who have firearms like this will be simply grandfathered in, or if they will have to surrender their guns, destroy them, or have them modified to be compliant with the law. We'll see what happens. Hopefully this gets struck down. I'm sure that channels like the Armed Scholar and Guns and Gadgets have done videos on this, so if you're watching this, you're on the internet, you can search those 2 channels and get some more information. So like I said, I'm not an expert, I'm just a guy, talking about this stuff on the internet. So that's all I've got for this week. Keeping it somewhat short and sweet. Hopefully some of these bills get challenged, like the Colorado bill, or the ICE thing with people, ICE agents just being able to kick in your door in the middle of the night. So we'll see what happens from there. Thanks for watching, guys. I greatly appreciate it, and I will see you all next time. Take care.